All right. Pursuant to the gubernatorial disaster proclamation and declaration of emergency for the city of Urbana, Illinois, related to the COVID-19 pandemic and in accordance with changes to the Open Meetings Act, Public Act PA 101-0640, it has been determined that an in-person public meeting is not prudent or safe at this time. Members of the public body will attend remotely using Zoom webinar. Members of the public may attend via Zoom or view meetings remotely on Urbana Public Television through the Comcast Xfinity on channels 6 and 1096, i3 Broadband on channel 6, AT&T Uverse on channel 99, and streamed on the web. At this moment, I'd like to call the City Council Committee of the Whole meeting to order, and will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu?
Here.
Mr. Evans?
Here.
Ms. Hersey?
Here.
Ms. Colasetti?
Here.
Ms. Bishop?
Here.
Ms. Wilkin?
Here.
Mr. Quisenberry?
Here.
Mayor Marlin?
Here.
Next, we have the approval of minutes of previous meetings. I'm asking for the approval of the minutes for the meeting of September 20th, 2021. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Second? Anybody?
I'll second.
It has been moved by Mary Alice and seconded by Jaya. Will the clerk please call the roll?
I had a quick comment.
Oh,
Sure.
discussion, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Grace. Discussion.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I'll have to vote present tonight because I wasn't able to pick up my packet in person and the link didn't work, so I wasn't able to access the minutes. So just wanted to clarify that and maybe request the clerk if we could check the links or send those. I apologize for not realizing that earlier that I didn't have them.
Okay. Any other discussion regarding the minutes? Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Wu?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Ms. Hersey?
Yes.
Ms. Colasetti?
Yes.
Ms. Bishop?
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry?
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin?
Present.
All right, next, are there any additions to the agenda? Okay. We have three presentations tonight. We will start with A, the CPRB resolutions update. And that is coming from the executive office, and you are good to go.
Hi, good evening, council members, Mayor Marlin, and everyone else on the at the meeting today. For those of you who aren't formally have met me yet, my name is Carla Boyd. I am the Human Rights and Equity Officer for the City of Urbana. In the role of the HREO, I serve as staff for the Civilian Police Review Board. And I was asked to present the following resolution to the council to ensure that the CPRB's position was on record concerning requirements for membership on the Civilian Police Review Board. Pursuant to a passing vote conducted by the Civilian Police Review Board, CPRB, the CPRB recommends the following amendment to Chapter 19, Article 3, Section 1922, Qualifications of Membership of the Urbana Code of Ordinances. Section 19-22 states, all members of the CPRB shall possess a reputation for fairness, integrity, and a sense of public service. B, no city employee may be employed to the board, nor shall be appointed to the board, nor shall any member be a current employee of, contracted by, or have any affiliation, whether current or former, with a federal, state, or local law enforcement agency. C, no person with a criminal felony conviction or plea shall be eligible to serve on the CPRB. In making appointments, the mayor shall endeavor to reflect community diversity, including different neighborhoods, income levels, ethnicity, age, gender, and experience. The CPRB would like to strike letter C, no person with a criminal felony conviction or plea shall be eligible to serve on the CPRB. There was an additional vote taken on the removal of section 1922B. However, the vote resulted in a tie and the motion did not pass. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Ms. Boyd? Grace?
Thank you. I had a question about the legality of this, since we have that side letter in the FOP contract. If there was some insight, legal counsel, on if we can make that change now.
Yes, sir. I think I can provide that for you, Councilmember Wilkin. I think my understanding from the CPRB is basically they're just reiterating their passage of that vote, I guess, if you will, to continue to have the council be aware that they do want to seek that change. I think they understand, given the dynamic of negotiations, the side letter and the executed FOP contract, may not necessarily be possible based on all of that, as you indicated in terms of legality of it. But I think they just want to continue to have the council understand that that's their position relative to that part of that ordinance.
So do you have an answer to that question? Can we do this? I mean, you said it may not be possible, but that's what my question is. Is it possible? It may not. That's what I already know. I'm asking
Okay.
the legal
All right,
experts.
okay.
Is it possible?
Appreciate
we're
the
not sure yet.
clarification on the idea of what they're after. So the answer to the question is no. Again, it's obviously part of the side letter of negotiated agreement between the FOP and the city relative to that. And so currently that is not capable of being changed by the council. It would be an item probably to bring up at next negotiations in terms of that contract. And I think the CPRB, I believe, and I'm hopefully not misstating, they can correct me at another meeting if they choose to do so, understands that dynamic that may not necessarily be possible right now, but they just want to, again, reiterate to look at that in the future when this comes up again.
Okay,
And-
Mary. Oh, are you done? Go ahead, Grace.
Well, I was just wondering if you could point to any more like precedent or anything else that you're gathering that from, or just the side letter is binding in and of itself.
Well, it is, and I think, again, you've had the direction from the city's council that negotiated that particular contract in terms of the position on the idea of the relative bona fide occupational qualification as it were to the idea of appointments as well, as far as why there's no issue in terms of that provision is now illegal based on the idea of the city's ordinance relative to discrimination. But I can certainly, if the council desires to do so, put together a formal memo outlining all of that and how it all plays out.
I would personally appreciate that.
Well, Mary Alice had her hand up and then Jaya.
Two quick things just for clarification. Carla, the section C that you said was a tie vote, was that for previous law enforcement employment?
Section B, and yes.
Oh, sorry, section B. Okay, my notes are wrong. And then I just wanted to mention that Ricardo Diaz is his hand up. I don't know if it's to join this conversation or to provide public input, but I believe he is the current chair.
He is.
Okay, Jason, can we get Ricardo in for panelists so that he can speak to this as well? In the meantime, Jaya, we're waiting for Ricardo.
I wanted to go back to Grace's question and ask for further clarification of, is it that we can't do this, or is it that we can't do it and have it actually take effect? Because I think those could be two different things. I understand the binding aspect of the contract, but even if it meant it couldn't go into effect with this current contract, are we not able to move forward with also the council recognizing that this is an issue and voting on it?
Yeah, I guess my suggestion would be, I'm not sure why the council would vote on something that would necessarily be ineffective ultimately. relative to that. I'm sure the discussion may center around the idea of potential members of the council wanting and a desire to change that particular ordinance provision. But I would offer the suggestion that I'm not sure a vote in terms of knowing heading into the vote that it's void realistically would be something the council would want to do.
Okay, Ricardo, I guess you, can you speak?
Sure. Am I coming through?
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, and yes on our side. I think that this is the second time we present this suggestion. We presented it last year well before the FOP contract was closed. If you will, at the worst, we would be doing what Ms. Colasetti also said. We may be too late to this decision, except for this. The side letter at the last contract was also signed, proposed and agreed to after the fact. What the mechanics are yours to figure out, but if there was a side letter from the opposite direction as to a contract, we would suggest that you could initiate a side letter for the contract, it originating on this side, not on the other side. If we really wanted to do it, there are mechanics to be worked out, especially when there's a question of violating our own ordinances. But I wanted to reiterate our position as the CPRB. We flagged this early, we brought it to council early, and we remain solid on this is not a good idea on the ordinance. It may have been when it was when the CPRB ordinance was begun, but what we've heard is old arguments to a changing position that we have taken and that we strongly recommend to you. We understand that it is very much your decision as to how go about it, but you would have our full support and our full logic of how we arrived at insisting on this particular point, even if it seemed like it was after the fact.
Okay, Christopher, thank you, Ricardo.
Dave, can we do a side letter? A new side letter for the FOP contract?
What I would offer, again, I think that may be a question more driven to the city's lead attorney negotiator on that. Midterm bargaining can be a very dicey subject once you try and reopen a contract, and here one that's basically just recently been executed in terms of trying to make adjustments after the fact. I'm not suggesting that it couldn't be done, but I think that may be best answered and responded to by the attorney for the city that was in those negotiations.
Let me see. Mary Alice, could you take the chair for a minute?
Sorry if I get my mouse. All right, the chair recognizes Sharice.
I just want to thank you. I guess the question I want to ask, Ms. Boyd, I know that you struck through you want to strike through the particular issue in the ordinance. I guess my question is, do we do that with repealing that particular part of the ordinance? How do we go about voting on that and then rewriting a side letter for the next FOP contract? That's what I was thinking.
Well, I'm not versed in protocols of resolution. I would defer to either Mr. Wessner or Ms. Mitten on how to be able to do that. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Would you like me to respond in some way?
Yes.
I think that Dave's advice is probably the way to go, which is it's when you think about what is involved in negotiating a contract, to focus on one term without having the totality of issues understood, I think is potentially problematic. So I think the intent of the CPRB is, as Carla and Ricardo have stated, which is they want to be on record for the future to, when the opportunity presents itself, to have their views clearly understood. But there, you just can't negotiate one narrow issue in isolation. And so I would just ask people to think about that before you try to take some action. But I think it would be useful to have the council that was involved in the negotiation here available if you wanted to discuss it further.
Oh, okay.
Would you like the chair back, Sharice?
Yes, I would. Thank you.
All right. I relinquish the chair to Sharice.
Thank you. Mayor Marlin.
Just a reminder that we are in the presentation portion of the agenda. So this is verging into discussion at this point, and there are a lot of questions being asked that we really don't have the people here that should answer them. So if you want to add this as a discussion item to a future agenda, that would be the way to go. But we just don't have the staff, and especially the legal counsel here, who should be answering these questions at this point.
Okay, I just wanted to get some clarification regarding any of that, and
Right.
Now's the time to do that, kind of. Grace should be the last one.
Okay, thanks. Just with Carol saying that, for the record that they were on for future negotiations, and that this was brought up earlier before this past negotiation. This is the second time it's been formally brought to council. So my question is why the CPRB side letter was still included when this was the clear, request from CPRB. And do you anticipate that anything would be different as far as city administration with the next contract? Like, why would the CPRB letter be in this contract and we would think that it wouldn't be included in the next one?
I at the moment I can't speak to the side letter in or out. That part I'm not the best person to address. But what I will say is I think there was some concern on the part of the CPRB that their views weren't made known to the negotiating team, and I assured them that they had been, and there were changes made to the side letter that were responsive to things that a particular issue that the CPRB had brought to the council a year ago, which had to do with requiring a first person account. And so that is no longer required. And that was struck from the side letter. So I'm just trying to have you understand that because it's a negotiation, just because you have these desires, it's each thing that you want is not necessarily achievable in the context of the give and take of a negotiation. But it isn't that the CPRB's views were not known, and it isn't that there wasn't progress made. It just wasn't this particular issue that we made progress with. I hope that's helpful.
Okay, well, thank you, Ms. Boyd. I appreciate the update. Next is an update for the comprehensive plan and 2005 comprehensive plan assessments. And this is being brought to us by Andrea Rudy. Okay, so take it away, Andrea and Lily.
Great. Well, thank you for the opportunity to provide an update on a couple of issues that we'd like to share with you. One is an update on the comprehensive plan process, and the other is a document that's an assessment of the 2005 comp plan, which you received in your packet. Lily's going to share some slides, and these slides we will send to you so that you have them. You don't have to write all the notes down. The first thing in the slide presentation we'd like to cover is the timeline for Imagine Urbana, just to kind of refresh refresh the memory of those that have seen this before, new council members, maybe just this might be new to you. So right now we are in the initial community engagement phase, and it's a very broad phase where we're out at events getting feedback from the community. The second phase will happen after we finish the this broad community engagement portion, and we will publish a report on the data that we've gotten. Tonight, I'm going to share just some preliminary data, and just so you can kind of get a flavor of some of the comments that we're hearing back. And then the last phase, we'll get into the more of the deeper dive into focus groups on the different issues that have surfaced in this broad community engagement phase. Lily? So everybody, I know all the council members have been on our website, but for the community at large, just to kind of reiterate what you can do on the website, we have an idea wall where people post ideas, share, you can see what everybody's talking about. There's a short survey you can take there. We have an interactive map where you can pin places and post pictures. We have videos, informative videos on what Imagine Urbana is like, or what it's about, and an impact video on how it impacts people. And then it's also a way to receive future communications. So anybody that registers on the site is able to get future communications if they would like to. So these are some of the community outreach methods that we have. We talked about the website. One is a postcard promotion that hopefully everyone got a couple of weekends ago. It came the weekend after Labor Day. Went to 21,000 households in Urbana, 6101 and 6102. And so we're just now starting to get some of that feedback, people going online, and it's there's a text survey that's now available in 4 languages. So it's Chinese, French, Spanish, and English. We've been passing out bookmarks with that information on it at a lot of our events, as well as different places such as the library and some other partners. We also have a bingo card. This has been popular. It's a way to get people to explore Urbana, just get out and about and find out new things about the city. We have a pop-up banner. Some of you that attended council meetings in person have seen that in the lobby of the city building. And then we have futuregrams, which are cards that people can write out visually what they'd like to see happen in Urbana. This particular futuregram, you can see they talk about downtown and all the things they'd like to see happen in downtown. So it's a way for people to express themselves. This is just a snapshot, literally, of different events we've been at this summer. A lot of different community partner events. We do not have events that are strictly for Imagine Urbana, because we really feel like we need to partner with some of our existing community agencies where they already have the trust of people and they feel comfortable providing feedback, which has been very effective for us. We've also had the urban planning class, both the spring semester and fall semester now have been working with us. Our plan commissioner chair, Dustin Allred's class, it's class 510 at the University of Illinois. So this spring, they had about 20 people in the class, and they wanted to reach out to people that were underrepresented populations in Urbana. So they chose these 4 groups to really reach out to, and they provided a final class report, and we'd be glad to share that with council. This report was done in May, just of their findings and also recommendations going forward on how we can keep engaging with these populations. This fall, it's more of an interactive. They selected 3 neighborhoods that they're really going to go out and work hard to reach those people in those neighborhoods. So they're planning events. We've had a couple of events already. They've got a couple of coming up this week in those neighborhoods. And they're also working with Lou Hopkins, who's on the Plan Commission, works at the University of Illinois, on an autonomous mapping tool project. And they will have this report ready for us in December. So they'll be at the tail end of that broad community engagement phase that we're currently in. So this is Urbana by the numbers. We've used this slide in several community presentations just to get people updated on where we're at. You can, at a quick glance, you can see how many website views there have been, a little over 4,000. the number of man hours that we've had in direct outreach. And these man hours are just the event hours. It's not multiplied by the number of staff people that were at these events. So it's just true outreach hours. You can see the community partners. We've had 11 partners so far that we've been working with on events. Down in the lower right-hand corner, you can see some of those events, Silver Hearts, Downtown Get Down. We just had Meadowbrook Park. There was a Head Start awareness event that we were at. Also, we've been at Pride Fest. There's a lot of events that we've been at. We're keeping track of all those so that we know, the different populations that have been present at those events. So right now we've had 191 surveys. You can see the wall submissions. All of these are from the second two items are from the website. Surveys are coming in from various sources, the website, the text survey, and also in-person surveys. We find at some of the events, people are more comfortable filling out a handwritten survey, and that's certainly an option, and we welcome that. The Futuregrams we've got them at events, and you can also mail those back to the city as well. Bingo cards, a lot of those have been distributed. Only 3 so far have been submitted, so they're going to have good chances on getting those Rick's Bakery gift cards. And then a lot of bookmarks distributed. These are 2 of our interns that we had over the summer that are pictured there, Natalie and Lena, who some of you met. And then this is just some of the preliminary data that we're getting on answers to the question, how do you imagine Urbana in 20 years? So it really runs the gamut of what people's interests are and what they'd like to see the city look at. I'm sure none of these things are really surprising to anybody. We're hearing a lot of these comments in public input at council meetings. So it's just nice to see some of these things get validated, and we'll have more data, of course, in our next report. And then where priorities should be, again, everything from schools to our taxes, typical infrastructure issues, et cetera. So kind of the theme has been keep what's good and change what can be improved. Those are some of the comments we're getting. And then these are the reports. Lily is going to be going over the comprehensive plan assessment, the 2005 assessment. The next thing we'll be working on is an Examine Urbana, which is what Urbana is today. And it'll be a collection of story maps, and we hope to have that probably by January, sometime in the winter, that we'll be able to present that. And then the preliminary public engagement summary, we'll be having that in the spring as well. And so that's our update, quick update. And like I said, we'll provide these slides for you. And if you have any questions, please reach out to Lily or I. And then Lily's now going to go over the 2005 comprehensive plan.
Yeah, and I'd like to say before we get started, I only have a couple of minutes to go over what a lot of staff time and a lot of work. So if you would like to see a longer presentation on it, Plan Commission, the most recent Plan Commission meeting was a special study session on this assessment report, and there's some really good feedback and discussion as well from members of Plan Commission. So I'm going to go over, in a quick couple minute summary of what this was. Why did we review the 2005 plan? One of the most important things before you set off in making a new comprehensive plan is really assess what the last one and what the current one has done and what it did well, and some of the things that we can improve for this next round of comprehensive planning. It was really important for us to really kind of find that information, and a lot of it had to be done with kind of really organic and detailed research, because there wasn't a lot of updates in this process after the 2005 plan was approved and adopted. So how did we do this? We kind of sliced and diced the plan in a lot of different ways. We took all of the goals, objectives, and implementation strategies, and we evaluated what we did do, our accomplishments, what kinds of things did get done, what did it seem like the priorities in our implementation strategies, and the groups that we decided we were really going to work with, and what we called out, and kind of the scope of the 2005 plan. We evaluated all of this information, and we tried to kind of thoroughly go through the plan and then provide like a high level analysis of that. And that is something that took a lot of different departments across the city. And it took a lot of hours of and work with, me early in the morning, a couple hours in your meeting that you have really important work to do. And you had to take that time out to answer, a lot of questions about what the past 16 years has been in their department. So that was an amazing process and a lot of really good work upon a lot of the departments at the city of Urbana. Some people just got very sporadic emails full of lots and lots of questions. And everybody was really a great sport. And it's really truly a staff effort, complete staff effort. I'm going to go over just a couple, because we only have a couple minutes, go over a couple of the things that lessons learned. And they're summarized in the executive summary, the first couple pages of the document. And so some of the things that we found was this neighborhood and corridor lens. And again, this presentation was a little bit more in depth with Plan Commission. So please review that if you'd like to, or if you have any questions, reach out to Andrea and me. But the comprehensive plan, the current one, had some neighborhoods that got a lot of attention and a lot of detail in their future land use and implementation strategies. And they actually didn't help a lot of those goals and objectives get prioritized. And then we had a lot of communities that were left out of that process. So one of the things is we'd like to keep the comprehensive plan at a community-wide level. Another thing was integrating general community concerns across the plan. There are a lot of parts about land use and transportation, which is what a traditional comprehensive plan covers. It's something that's dictated necessarily by the state of Illinois, but it's evolved a lot greatly over the past 100 years what the concept of a comprehensive plan is. And land use and transportation does relate to a lot of different things like neighborhood safety and health, different aspects of some economic development. And so really integrating a lot of the things that people tell us today are more general, high level, and what they expect government in general to be, trying to really relate that and bring that back to the comprehensive plan and into this. That means that we really have to integrate more general community concerns. The actions taken versus what we prioritized and we tried to create a very sound strategic document for the future. But oftentimes, as you're probably aware, there are plenty of times where we can get sidetracked with the issue of the day, and that can make it really difficult for us to stick to our strategic priorities. And some things really fall by the wayside. If it's not immediately in the attention of the city, then it doesn't get done. And there's a lot of really important things that comprehensive plan covers that need to get done. So making sure that we annually evaluate the process, the progress that we're making, and updating the plan and the implementation strategies, if we so choose to have that structure, would be a really important step in making sure that we meet that and being really transparent in that process. Equity integration, there was a very small amount of equity information and goals and strategies in the plan that were in a section that was, I think a lot of folks wouldn't really recognize as being where you turn the pages to go to see equity. And that's a really important part of this new upcoming comprehensive plan, is for us to be more equitable throughout the whole plan. And then the time spent planning, this one kind of gives me a couple of heart palpitations, but we do strive to meet the demands of the community needing an updated plan as fast as staff time will allow. So we'll work to create an updated comprehensive plan. We'd like to have that sometime in 2023. So that's a very high level review of the assessment document. It's the first supporting document. It will be posted on the city's website. It'll also be posted on the Imagine Urbana website. And so we'll have this document to go forward and to direct kind of the community's interests in knowing what we have accomplished and what comprehensive plans do. But we'll also meet that and supplement that with Examine Urbana. And Examine Urbana will have this information plus more about comprehensive planning and what the city of Urbana does and what are the considerations for the future of Urbana with the comprehensive plan.
Thank you, Lily. Thank you, Andrea. And okay, Grace, very quickly.
Just wanted to again also say thank you guys for putting this together. I think especially the lessons learned is really helpful. And I hope that we can fully utilize this plan for the next time that it's in effect. And I guess my question was if you could as far as you know, is there like an example you could give us for a clear path for using the comprehensive plan and guiding the city's decision? And that might be outside of the scope of, I know, just putting it together. But if you could help us visualize how to fully utilize this plan in city operations.
Yeah, I can give you a really traditional example of this. The Plan Commission is, as you might have heard before, is responsible for creating this plan, right, and presenting it to City Council. There are criteria amongst that Plan Commission use the comprehensive plan for instance, issues of zoning, issues of land use development. That's the really traditional idea of what the comprehensive plan does. So you have a subdivision come through, and you know the community has goals and needs of where roads go and what that kind of looks like and how it kind of gets built and what the purpose and strategy of that. But today's comprehensive plans really expand upon that in many different ways. So oftentimes, for instance, if you're having a prioritization or you have an annual budget, there's a lot of times that you could you take a look at your strategic document that comes from a lot of public input across the community. And there are also strategies that the whole community has signed off on. And the measures and the what that success looks like, you can refer back to something like a comprehensive plan because you had that comprehensive amount of input. And then you can help you guide that strategic level thinking. And it helps you get to that higher level of looking at the community as a whole, as opposed to sometimes what can happen in more inequitable situations where it's responding to the loudest thing that's right in front of us.
Okay, and Jaya.
Thank you. I'll try to keep this quick. Could you just explain to me if we're moving from that more community specific to that more, community wide, larger Urbana perspective, how does that play into those conversations about land use for different parts of Urbana?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So that community-wide focus, it really helps us really focus in on providing an level of an equal level of attention to neighborhoods. But one of the things that a comprehensive plan can do is ask that we really provide a more in-depth small area plans or neighborhood plans, for instance, or corridor plans. Or for another thing that the last comprehensive plan did a really great job of was transportation related plans like the bicycle master plan and the pedestrian plan. And the cool thing about doing that is about removing that from the comprehensive plan and focusing in on that is that the plans that came out of that last comprehensive plan were much more detailed and they were really easy for staff to pull it off the shelf and implement it. They came, for instance, the bicycle master plan came with implementation matrices. It came with a network of people. It had immediate effects, right? Not immediate, but in comprehensive planning terms, immediate effects, right? So eventually we were a gold level community. We're actually the only gold level community in the state of Illinois. We have a lot of bicycle infrastructure on projects of a certain size that we incorporate in, as well as pedestrian infrastructure. And we have a myriad of different levels that we score different things in both of those plans. And both plans also address things that the community has said they're concerned about when it comes to those specific topics. A really good quick aside to that as well is that different neighborhoods have wildly different needs. And so that's another thing that can be really helped in that process of keeping it at a community level is that one neighborhood's needs may be more affected about, their neighbors and industrial uses or what the university is doing. And another neighborhood is really affected about really interested in how the city interacts with what's happening inside their neighborhood, what the programs and services exist, are there appropriate levels of infrastructure. So that's another good example of keeping it at a community-wide.
Okay, thank you, Lily and Andrea. I appreciate the presentation. Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is our next presentation regarding a push tax, Wayne Williams and Thomas Condon. And I'm going to just introduce Wayne. We know that Wayne is our township assessor, and I'm gonna let him take it from there. Okay, Wayne.
Hi, everybody. I met Tom Condon at the IML conference a couple weeks ago, and he did a presentation on a push tax. Tom Condon is a lawyer at Peterson Johnson Murray. He authored the first push tax passed by the village of Oak Lawn and has been representing them and the various legal issues regarding that. But I'll let Tom take it from here and explain what the push tax is, and then I'll come back at the end and talk about revenue.
Good evening. My name is Tom Condon. I'm a lawyer. I practice in Chicago. I represent multiple municipalities. I'm here tonight. I met Wayne last 2 weekends ago at the IML conference, and I gave a presentation on municipalities and video gaming. And after that conference, Wayne came up and we started talking about regulation of video gaming, and asked me if I would come. And that was easy to accept considering we were on Zoom. I think that the drive down 57, not that I wouldn't be willing, but at any rate, so just a brief summary of what the push tax is. The push tax is a penny. The push tax has been passed by most communities, and it's a penny per push it's an amusement tax that is on the player of the video gaming terminal. That is that there is a penny each time that person plays. Now, again, Wayne said that he would talk to you about the revenue. The tax that was passed by both the Village of Oak Lawn and the City of Waukegan, which currently are involved in litigation. The Illinois Gaming Machine Operators Association has challenged it. In the Waukegan case, the court, what they do is they allege that it is an unconstitutional occupation tax, that it's an impermissible license for revenue, that it violates the uniformity clause because most municipalities, particularly the two that were involved in litigation, don't tax automatic amusement devices such as Pac-Man or Golden Tee or any of those things. Those arguments, save for one argument, have been dismissed by the case by Waukegan. But just going back to, right, I know that you guys have video gaming. What happened, really the impetus for the tax was that when the Video Gaming Act was amended to add for the sixth machine.
Tonight at council, and they started at 6:30.
Andrea? Yeah. So maybe
Andrea,
Jason
we can hear you.
There she goes. So the impetus was when they added the sixth machine, the revenue, there's a significant drain on resources for municipalities with regards to video gaming, gaming in general, gambling. It requires an increase in city services. And so when they added the sixth machine, the revenue split, 25% goes to the state, 1% goes to the video gaming terminal operator, central communication system, 69% is split evenly between the establishment and the terminal operator. And out of that, then there's only 5% that goes to the local municipality. Again, kind of one of the things that I talked about in my presentation is that when money is spent on gaming, it's just not spent in other areas of the community. What's unique about Illinois and gaming, it's one of the only states that doesn't require a sign talking about gambling addiction. Whereas if you go to a casino, it does. There's also what's weird about the video gaming terminals, and it doesn't allow them to track player tracking. So you don't have an idea of how much each person is putting into the machine. Why that was done. really, and I will tell the reason that the push tax was done both in Oak Lawn and in Waukegan, which are the two that I represent, it really was as a means to offset the adverse effects of gambling within the community. One of the goals was to use the revenue to do community outreach. Really, you know, for lack of a better term, it's like a sin tax. And so Wayne, I don't know if that covered, I think it's more of a, I'm happy to take questions. You know, it's the regulation of video gaming is very new. And, you know, it's for the most part, I shouldn't say it's not new. Obviously, you know, video gaming, municipalities could have opted out of video gaming. Municipalities could have limited the number of machines that are allowed. But for quite a period of time, you know, people thought that the only way to regulate was based upon the placement, was for terminal license fees, whether it be the terminal operator's license or the fee per machine, and the push tax, we believe, is another way for a home rule municipality to regulate the video gaming within their jurisdiction.
So I just wanted to add that, so just in summary, the push tax is a tax of a penny every time someone pushes the machine to play the video gaming machine. What a push tax is not, it's not an endorsement of gaming. Gaming is here, whether you like it or not, it's here. And frankly, I think we should tax it. There are other states that tax these video gaming terminals much higher than we do. For example, in Oregon, there's a tax rate of 73%. In Pennsylvania, there's a tax rate of 52%. In South Dakota, 50%. Here in Illinois, it's 30%. The Illinois Gaming Board puts out monthly reports that shows the amount wagered. So it's very easy to get a very conservative number of how much revenue a penny per push tax would bring in to the city. So for example, there was about $10 million wagered on in August of this year. And if you divide that by 4 and multiply it by a penny, that comes out to about $25,000. In 2019, that number averaged about $37,000 a month. That did drop in 2020 because the parlors were closed because of COVID. Since 2019, the maximum bet has gone up from $2 to $4. So even though there's been an increase in gaming, the amount of revenue the tax would bring in is lower. But right now it's still averaging this year about $27,000. It would average about $27,000 a month. So if you have any other questions.
Can we do a few quick questions if very quickly?
Yeah, just before I just want to add one thing. So the reason I'm bringing this, I asked to present this now is because the General Assembly has bills pending that would actually prohibit the city. It would preempt home rule to prohibit the city from implementing this tax. So veto session starts.
Yes, correct. And so there was a House bill that was passed. It's before the Senate. It passed in the House, and it's going to limit home rule authority, and it would limit home rule authority's ability to regulate video gaming terminals if it passes. Specifically, it would, but the current version only will allow those entities that already have the push tax to continue to have it. And that was a bill that was introduced in last session, and it's up in veto session in the next 2 weeks.
Right, veto session starts October 19th.
Okay, Mary Alice.
I'll make my question quick. Thank you very much, Thomas, for coming tonight. I'm wondering if you could send us an email, some examples of what Waukegan and Oak Lawn are doing with the funds. You had mentioned that they were trying to use those funds to provide more resources for gambling addiction. And if you have very specific things that they were doing, it would be great if you could email us.
Mary Alice, trustee, or alderman, I apologize.
Don't worry about it.
The person. I've been on a long time, and so at any rate, what I will tell you is that when it was first passed, since the day that it was passed, that it has been involved in, it's been involved in litigation, and so the litigation in only one community, there's only one terminal operator that actually paid before they filed suit, and so it's been enmeshed in litigation on motions to dismiss for some period. So the likelihood that you would receive in the very short period, a quick payment, that is, unless the gaming bill passes. If the gaming bill passes, the House bill that's going to limit the ability for the push tax, the terminal operators obviously lose their ability to say that the state that's under the exclusive jurisdiction of the state, because the state just ratified it.
And I want to be very clear about the timeline here. Oaklawn passed this tax. The gaming operators sued. They started to lose in court, and then they got the legislature to file a bill that would eliminate the ability for home rule units to do this tax. There's one company that paid the tax, and it was promptly, after they started paying, it was promptly bought by one of the other video gaming companies.
Okay. Jaya, very quickly.
Quick question. Yeah. I'm wondering, since this tax is actually on the people playing the game, is there anything looking at the impact on people who might already have a gambling problem?
Well, once you start to collect, right, you can decide to spend money for that. When you go into a casino, they have signs, call this number if you have a gambling addiction, and there are funds to support that. It's just not the case with video gaming.
And so obviously the power, right? Obviously the Constitution, Illinois Constitution allows only municipalities to tax for certain things. The way that the purpose of the tax, this is for the welfare of the, for the general welfare of the community.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Condon and Wayne. I appreciate the information. I really just wanted this information to be known, and I hope that we can discuss it, maybe do a discussion period sometime in the future.
Thank you.
All right, just be aware that
there's a time limit.
There's a time limit.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Thank you. Okay, moving on to public input. And the first person I'll call on is Giovanna Benedetto. Okay, Giovanna.
Hi, thank you so much. And I'm just going to reread something for public comment that I emailed the city council members, and then there's something that I'd like to show you. As many of you know, the Silver Hearts works closely not only with the Silverwood community, but we are currently working with Steer Place and the Learman communities. Safety is the #1 concern that is communicated to us. When a crime happens, the people in the community are the witnesses not only to the actual act, but to the perpetrators running from the crime. However, our eyes can only capture so much information, and often, despite the witnesses, there's not enough to pursue and find the perpetrators. I recently moved from Aspen Courts to Austin and Ivanhoe Way. 2 days after moving in, there was a shooting on Ivanhoe Way at a house just outside of the complex and only 1 block away from my house. I saw the car fleeing past my house. However, due to the speed of the car and it being dark in front of my house, I was only able to make out the color of the car. They had shot into a house where a 12-year-old child was home alone. If there had been a camera installed in the area, the police would have had the information that witnesses could not provide. Thankfully, this time, no one was hurt this time. However, what happens the next time that same house gets shot at? What happens when that child gets hurt or someone else? This is a situation that may be prevented with information from these cameras. These crimes affect all involved, and the trauma our community is experiencing must come to an end. Too many of us, too many children are hearing gunshots. Too many people are walking out and seeing crime scenes that look like a scene from a crime show. My family specifically will never forget walking out and seeing that when we lived in Silverwood. And that is what my children described it as at the time. Our city is under attack, and we must do everything we can to create a community where trauma from these crimes is no longer the norm. We must use every tool we can to catch those responsible for these traumas so they can be held accountable for the damage they cause. This is not just an issue in marginalized communities. We all know it is happening everywhere. We believe that installing these cameras is another tool that will only help to reduce that trauma. And it will help make that happen. We, as so many community members and you, look forward to a day when we can live without those fears daily. That is from my team at Silver Hearts. I have another message from a little girl who tried to stay up but fell asleep. There's one part of our community that really, to me personally, is the most affected, but also as a community leader that we rarely hear from, are her children. Lily wanted to be here tonight to introduce this video and voice her support on behalf of our children, but sleep went out. So on behalf of our children and from their voice and how this trauma affects them and why these cameras are so important, I'd like you to watch this, and I won't have anything to say afterwards because I think the video says it all.
Do we have time to do that? Or Giovanna, maybe you can send it to us through the city council email.
It's actually another person giving public input.
Oh, okay. Well, I know there are a lot of people with public input tonight, but oh, okay. Okay. So this is what happened. It is coming up? What? Okay. Okay, so this is.
So, do you remember how old you were when we moved to Silverwood? No. You were 3 years old, and Iva was about 5 months old. Itty bitty. In the stroller all the time, huh? And everybody fell in love with you guys, right? So you've grown up here, haven't you? You've been here a long time. So, can you tell me, like, I know we've talked about maybe some of the things that you had to go through that were hard when you lived here. Can you tell me about that stuff?
Like shootings, people
Why did some of your friends have to move away?
Because their parents got other jobs, and probably because of some shootings, things that they can't be around. I don't know.
Yeah. How did it make you feel when that stuff was happening, or when that stuff happens?
Really sad, because one of my friends, James, he went to school with me, and since I was in preschool, and we were best friends.
Yeah, you still miss them, don't you? Yeah.
We used to climb on top of the fence together.
How much trouble did you used to get into for that?
A lot.
And you still did it, huh? Yeah. Not the smartest decision, huh? So, was there anything else that upset you or that made it hard for you to live over here? What would you do when a shooting happened? What would you have to do to be safe?
Stay inside.
Oh, that had to stink. Did you like staying inside when that happened? No. You were kind of stuck with your sister then, weren't you? Was there anything else that was hard or that you didn't like about living over here?
No. I really didn't like people getting killed, because no matter what color people are, they still matter, because they're people.
Okay, well, thank you, Lily, for that. And then next we have Minnie Pearson.
Good evening. Thank you. Thank you for this time to speak to you. Good evening, Mayor Marlin and the City Council members. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, the NAACP Champaign County branch continues to be concerned about the increase in gun violence that continues to hamper our community. I am speaking on behalf of the NAACP Champaign County branch, and I am the only speaker as the president. We, the NAACP, understands the mayor's proposal to install cameras in the communities where gun violence is occurring is a novel idea. We are hopeful that the technology will have an impact on this violence in our communities, especially with the children, as you have just witnessed, which is heartbreaking. Not only were they hurt by COVID, but they are now being hurt by gun violence. And we have to agree. The NAACP Champaign County branch have heard many concerns from the community, and they voiced their opinions to the NAACP. One of which is that their constitutional rights and privacy rights might be violated. But every day that there are gun violence in our communities, we walk around and our freedoms in our Constitution is being infringed upon by gun violence. So we are ruled that way as well. We certainly hope that this is not the case, and that the city and the mayor must put in place a policy that will clearly state and show that this will not happen. The NAACP branch is willing to host or co-host the mayor with the mayor and the city a couple of town hall meetings in the Black community to discuss gun violence and how this technology is going to be utilized in our community, and explain why. Kind of a Q&A. We know that this is really the best for our community right now. We can't keep doing the same things and expect different results. So the NAACP Champaign County branch supports the mayor in her proposal to put cameras in those areas. And I know that there are people who have a lot to say on this, but you have to understand the lived experiences of people of color who are going through these things. It is nice to have your input from our white sisters and brothers, but understand children are suffering, people are suffering, and they are not free to move about their community because of this gun violence. And it's hard for everybody, whether you are a senior citizen, whether you're going to your doctor's appointments or wherever you're going, you never know when you might meet with something that is going to harm you. So the NAACP does support placing the cameras. Now, I understand that there is a need for a town hall discussion on this, but we cannot wait for this to happen. That can come much later, right afterward. But right now, we need to put those there in order to slow down this gun violence that it's ruining our education system. The children, it's ruining them. So we really need to do something. I know we don't have a lot of time to speak right now, but I truly support this. And so does the NAACP. And there's only one spokesperson for the NAACP in this community, and that's Minnie Pearson, and I support it. Thank you so much for listening to me tonight. And hopefully we will make the decision real soon to install the cameras. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Pearson. Next is CK, I'm not sure if I can say that name, the name Gonzalez?
Gonzalez.
Gonzalez, okay.
Oh, good ear. Thank you very much. I want to thank you all for your service. And I also would like to say I signed into this meeting to hear your earlier meeting. And I'm really impressed with how respectfully you all deal with each other, even when it's clear that there are high feelings and disagreements among you. It was really proud to see how you interact and represent us. So tonight I'd like to make 3 comments and ask the council to consider 3 actions with respect to the comprehensive plan about which you heard an update this evening. First comment is that I commend the energy going into the Imagine Urbana effort to reimagine a comprehensive plan effort. My concern is that in looking at the comprehensive plan effort and the changes that have occurred in it and the revisions over many decades, I worry that we are losing track of the institutional memory of consistently expressed concerns of Urbana's residents over time. I was on the Plan Commission during one of the major revisions to the comprehensive plan, and I think that we've lost our memory of the input that has been made to the city over and over from its residents from 1 year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, 30 years ago, 35 years ago, 40 years ago. I regret to tell you I was part of that. And 50 years ago, if you look at our records. So as part of this, I'd like to commend to you, the council's attention, the comments that Lou Hopkins made in the September 23rd Plan Commission meeting. Starting at about 31 minutes into that meeting, he talked about the process and talked about in particular the changes since 2005. And I think it would be helpful for council members to hear and consider that as you oversee this process. So I have 3 requests I'd like to make that the council consider acting upon. One is I'd like to suggest for your consideration that you separate the Imagine Urbana process from the comprehensive plan revision process and use a much more focused comprehensive plan revision process. And as part of a more focused comprehensive plan revision process, consistent with your staff recognition that Urbana neighborhoods have wildly different needs, and there are many neighborhoods across Urbana, I think there's a clear need to build better bridges to neighborhoods across the city. So I think it would be helpful for the city to reach out to neighborhoods with very well advertised meetings focused on the planning and land use and comprehensive plan issues. And finally, my 3rd request for your consideration is that you direct the Staff and Plan Commission to focus on these neighborhood plans that would then be linked to the overall comprehensive plan. People live in neighborhoods. People have neighborhood concerns. We're all residents of Urbana and we all share citywide concerns, and people live in neighborhoods. So I thank you very much for your time. I thank you for your service. And that's all I have.
Thank you, CK, I appreciate that. Next is Angel Johnson. Angel, you're muted. Or maybe it's.
Okay, can
Okay.
you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening, Mayor Marlon and the rest of the crew. I would like to say that real quickly. First off, I spoke with Ms. Sheila Dawes, and she informed me that the reason that we never ever got a grant because we are a home daycare, licensed daycare, and we have a licensed youth center in our home. I would like to speak to Mayor Marlon. I would like to change that. And I would like to also know when was that law implemented that we pay taxes on our businesses in our home, but we're not able to receive funding from our community for our businesses. Being that COVID-19 has hit, we took a hit from our businesses, okay? And we was unable to get any grant money or any funding. Nothing is set aside. So you have the gambling machines here. You have all the millions of dollars that has came into our community, and we was just X out. She said they never have that. They don't have people in their home to remodel, fix up, you know, and I want to start that. I want to speak with the mayor and the city council. I want you guys to go in your chambers and talk about this and see where we could pull that funding from for that, for people who own businesses and changing the community. We change youth lives. We have doctors and lawyers, and we have police officers have came out of our business. We have sacrificed our funding. You know, we made good money and we sacrifice our funding, and we pay taxes every year. And so we go by every rule, every law, every right, everything we go by, just like a building, a model building that's out there, okay? Secondly, I would like to have more information on the cameras. How do the cameras work? Who will be in charge of the cameras before I say yes? I don't mind cameras, but what and where the cameras will be installed, and how can we make sure that they're accurate of when they catch someone license plate? Would it be the right person? And whoever behind watching and paying attention to this, who's going to be honest enough that they will not discriminate? Okay. So I just have those questions. And I like to say that also, can someone call me and tell me how can I get my mortgage paid again? They paid it one time. It wasn't a lot, but it was enough to help me to put more money with my mortgage. I didn't know we would still be going through the COVID at this time. I work every day, but things are going up so extremely high. Unfortunately, all the money is just being taken away because due to what we went up on the food, you went up on gas, you went up on this, we went up on that, and that's fine. Taxes went up. Okay, fine.
Yeah, taxes increase.
Yes, taxes went up. So come on now, y'all gotta help us too. And we're making changes and you know, but you guys are doing a great job too. I just want to say, keep up the good work. Let's work as a community. That's what's most important and needed. And our youth is very important. Let's get some metal detectors. I've been talking back and forth to the Board of Education for a better middle school and high school. I asked for these metal detectors 6 years ago. Let's go. Let's get it done, because it's very critical today that we pay attention. Things are changing in Champaign-Urbana. We're not the cornfield city no more. Okay? So God bless all of you. Take care.
Thank you, Angel.
You're welcome.
Okay. Next is Tracy Chung.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, I'm Tracy Chong. The city really cannot justify the decisions that were made during the police collective bargaining contract, other than to repeat the same lies week after week. Just tonight, we heard City Attorney Dave Wessner. We heard how he brought up the bona fide occupational qualification again to justify discrimination against an entire class of residents, to justify taking away the rights of an entire class of residents. This is the same lie that Urbana's puppet negotiator Ben Gert told to justify discriminating against anyone with a felony conviction. However, none of these attorneys can actually explain how a law related to labor and employment can actually apply to voluntary members of the Urbana Civilian Police Review Board. I hope that after I brought up this issue 2 weeks ago and called out Ben Gert's lie, at least some of you council members bothered to look up what the bona fide occupational qualification law says. Did any of you look it up? If yes, why did you let Dave Wessner lie to you and the public again? If not, shame on you. The public is doing research and telling you that you are being lied to, and you don't even bother to do minimal research to gain the tiniest bit of awareness so that you know when parties with biased interests use lies to justify discrimination. Again, if I'm wrong about the bona fide occupational qualification, let me know, say something. Don't just sit there and keep quiet. Carol Mitten is still claiming that the removal of the first person account requirement for filing a police complaint was a win for CPRB. She just said it again tonight, that this was part of the negotiation that resulted from the CPRB's wants. Carol Mitten's claims are dishonest. The first person account requirement was never in the ordinance. It was always an invention by the Urbana Police Department to deny complaints. The police ultimately backed off from that invented requirement when it was brought to light that it was never in the ordinance. This is evidenced by the fact that they removed the first person account requirement without an ordinance change. Week after week, you guys continue to let Mayor Marlin, City Administrator Carol Mitten, police leadership, and whoever they hire to give so-called legal advice, you let them lie to you and the public. You let them lie to justify discrimination and to justify police misconduct. Why? Thank you.
Sorry, I was just saying thank you, Ms. Chong. Next is Julie Watkins.
Hello, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I hope everyone is safe and continues to be safe. As other people have been saying, people in danger of eviction are not safe. Not them, not for the rest of us, when evictions will mean more people getting and spreading COVID. Please contact the sheriff. I hope individual council members and the council as a whole will also advise no evictions. My main point, I want to thank Frances Rigberg again for her input last week. I recommend anyone who didn't hear it to listen to on the UPTV 6 Urbana City Council YouTube for September 27. It starts about 1 hour, 27 minutes and a half. The videos on the Urbana City website allow play and pause, but not forward and back. So go to YouTube. She said it much better than I farbled last week. It is also context for the first presentation for tonight. I believe Urbana should follow its own ordinances and not discriminate. I think the local FOP members should think long and hard about why prior conviction is a protected class in the city of Urbana. Listen again to Frances Rigberg's statement. Are you going to keep insisting on your so-called right to discriminate? Just because you keep saying over and over again, it isn't discrimination, doesn't make it not discrimination. Listen to the negotiator's so-called explanation. That's on the September 13th video, starting at time mark about 1 hour, 42 minutes. He said, if you're a bank robber, you don't get to work for a bank. He said that it's a bona fide occupational qualification exception. And he said, in order to police the police, you cannot have a felony conviction. All of those statements are statements. They're not a defense of the exception. And they don't answer the issues that Frances Rigberg listed in her statement. As I said last week, I'm hoping to hear a defense of how it's a bona fide occupational qualification exemption from a local FOP member, other than FOP says so. I also recommend Chris Evans' statement at that same meeting, September 13th, which starts about 2 hours and 5 minutes. Thank you for your consideration of this matter.
Keep forgetting to unmute, sorry. Thank you, Julie. Next is Mary Pat McGuire.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great, thank you. I just want to share some thoughts on the comprehensive plan topic that was covered this evening, and just at a very high level to share some thoughts on that subject. And also, I'm sorry, I should have said I'm Mary Pat McGuire and I'm at 804 West Nevada in Urbana. I also am a member of the Design Review Board here in Urbana. And I wanted to share that I'm very curious actually about the Imagine Urbana system, or that process, and how that input or that engagement process is really connected to the comprehensive plan development, and how that engagement can actually inform the comprehensive plan itself. Well, I think the engagement process is terrific, but I just at a really practical level, I'm curious and interested in what the actual process of developing the comp plan will be. And I'm thinking a lot here about Lily Wilcox's excellent point she's been making about the plan assessment and its highlight of how the comp plan going forward really needs to benefit the different neighborhoods, and that we need this kind of overall guiding policy and planning document that can help us with what we will probably be a lot of challenging decisions about transforming our city and moving forward through a lot of accelerated pressures. However, we need to really focus on the diverse needs across neighborhoods. And so how those different pieces are fitting together at different scales just isn't really clear at this moment. And it would be nice to hear something about that process. I also strongly support that we are working simultaneously on a set of neighborhood, or maybe we could think about them as district level plans relative to aggregate issues in certain parts of our city. And as one example, and I'm just going to cite something in West Urbana, I know there are very many challenging issues all over our city. But one example we have currently that's very relevant to this multi-scale planning process is here in West Urbana, we have a burgeoning issue of the R7 district. And this is a number of properties that compose a significant part of West Urbana. It's an outdated zoning designation that needs to be revisited, and the fate of these properties is really not clear, but it bears on the future of this of the Lincoln corridor. And so this is an example of a district issue that fits into a larger urban comprehensive planning process having to do with land use, zoning, possible rezoning, preservation, which the city is highlighting in this in this district, pardon me. And then also, what does redevelopment look like along the corridor given those properties? So this plays also not into just preservation, but what is the affordability mix of housing options here? So I'm really interested in all of that as a kind of, and those connections. So we need a clear process, or at least we on the outside need to understand, or are very interested in how all those pieces come together. And lastly, I'm interested in what other commissions and boards are helping to inform that process. So for example, how is the Sustainability Advisory Commission involved in comprehensive planning? And as a Design Review Board member, I'm interested in how the guidelines that came out of the 2005 plan, how can those be re-envisioned as well to support not just reviewing design, districts, but how can they be can also assist in thinking about the future of the comprehensive plan as a whole. So thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you very much, Mary Pat. Next is Eddie Pratt Jr.
Good evening. Can y'all hear me clear?
Yes. Well, kind of.
Oh, hold on. Give me 1 second.
Your time is gone, Eddie.
Okay.
Better. Thank you.
All right. So let's get down to brass tacks, shall we? I'm lost about a good 20 seconds. So in a matter of these cameras in which, to be completely honest, it doesn't fit the purpose. If we're deploying cameras in the sense of wanting to deter violent crime, I have some things to share with you all. So some information from the Municipal Technical Advisory Service Institute for Public Service published this only a couple of years ago about crime and cameras. Is there empirical evidence that surveillance cameras reduce crime? Based on the papers, articles, and reports reviewed, it seems that CCTV is most effective when combined with other crime-reducing / deterring methods such as improved lighting, security guards, and defensible space. So let's go a little further. So there's mention of about 15 different reports, and I don't have time to go through all of them, but I'm gonna summarize a good bit of them. So we have reports from every state here in the country, all the way to as far as Sweden. And they have common denominators in which they all have the common denominator being that they conclude that cameras did not deter violent crime. Where it was successful at deterring crime was crime involving property, theft, burglary, but only when paired with infrastructural improvements. The one thing that we're lacking here in this community, lights. So you could almost argue to say that if we were to try to make a real stride in public safety, we would look towards strengthening our infrastructure first before going to something that has been proven to not be effective. This is a reactive thing. We have to reckon with that. I understand that people are hurting right now and they are living through this trauma. I understand this because I too am living here. I've lived through this in Detroit as a kid growing up in the 90s. So I'm reliving this. This is peeling off old scabs for me every day. But at the same time, we gotta be honest. This is not the way forward. It's not. And to do this before bringing it to the community is egregious. I mean, honestly. This is something, we're talking about mass surveillance here. Everyone in this community has a stake in that. And the opportunity should be had by the community first to buy in before you decide what is good for them. This is their community. And there should be represented in every iota of policy decision-making. Good night.
Thank you, Eddie Pratt Jr. Okay, next is Colin Dotson.
Hi, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
My name is Colin. I'm a resident of Ward 2 in Urbana and former city council candidate for this ward and organizer with the Party for Socialism and Liberation. We are facing down an urgent humanitarian crisis, a crisis of evictions. Even under normal circumstances internationally, housing is recognized as a fundamental human right. And it's doubly so during a pandemic. And we still are in a pandemic. New COVID cases right now are very similar in number to the same time last year when we were still in the middle of a peak. And November was the worst month of all for the entire country, or county, sorry. Now, I know a common refrain to this is that there's a lot of aid money from federal, stimulus packages available to pay for rent assistance. And that's good, that's great. But if anything, I think this should be an argument for preventing evictions rather than opposing eviction moratoria. Because what that means to me is if all that money is available, that means landlords will be paid, banks will be paid, and that removing people from their homes for non-payment of rent is nothing but unnecessary cruelty. And that being said, there are too many barriers to the aid programs that exist. I've looked into these. I've tried to go through the application process, and what I've found is that the Regional Planning Commission and the township, neither of them have posted hours of operation anywhere available. Calling the phone number to the Regional Planning Commission was ultimately unhelpful, as all I got was an automated message informing me to download the application from their website. I had already downloaded the application. The problem was that many things about the application were unclear. I had questions that needed answered, and there was no clear way to get those answers. The only way that we got answers is when a friend went in person, waiting in line, again, in the middle of a pandemic, to get those answers. Now, this is a little bit of a problem considering that time and transportation is not guaranteed for all Urbana residents. And that's especially the case for those who are at the most imminent risk for eviction. So trying to be productive here and suggesting solutions, some things that could help here is one, to provide human operators to answer questions at the Regional Planning Commission that are easily accessible when you call the line. Press 0 for the operator, whatever it takes like that. And then two, to avoid excess calls, provide a frequently asked questions section, an FAQ, in an easily accessible place right next to the application download. Now, nearly 5,000 people are at risk of eviction in this county alone. And removing housing stability will threaten public health and exacerbate the pandemic. And it will also likely increase gun violence in our community. Further, Urbana prides itself on having one of the most progressive human rights ordinances in the state. But housing insecurity already disproportionately impacts already marginalized communities, especially Black and LGBT communities. Allowing evictions to proceed will only make this situation worse. So I urge the council, please call on the sheriff not to carry out evictions, and please improve the processes for gaining the aid necessary to ensure that existing outstanding obligations are met. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Colin. Next is Alan Axelrod.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So bank robber doesn't work for the bank, eh? Well, there happens to be a person named Frank Abagnale Jr., who was a prolific check fraudster and was then hired by the FBI. So let's just acknowledge sayings for the lack of intelligence behind them, shall we? Now, with regards to the camera situation, there's a disturbing part in addition to the surveillance that has yet to be talked about, and let's deal with that. The ability to store and recall that information. If you adopt this thing, because we know there's a limited ability to convince you from reactionary behaviors, must include the ability to log who searches what. Let me tell you why. The McLean County Democratic Party gave me an apology earlier this year. Why did they do that? Well, In December of last year, specifically on Christmas, I was accused of being a Republican operative sent from Florida to go after Governor J.B. Pritzker. Now, there's an interesting thing there in the conversation, which is I didn't actually move from Florida to Illinois. I moved from Oklahoma to Illinois, but I was an absentee voter in Florida. And so I was able to surmise the fact that this was a McLean County Democratic Party precinct committee person abusing their access to voter address history, and I called them out and they admitted it. So let's now reflect that you will have police officers in charge of looking up camera information whenever they please. Please have that information logged. I'll give you an example of how much I don't trust the police. When I was driving to the county building during my lunch hour, a police vehicle with the license plate U30067 ran 3 stop signs consecutively. They don't follow the law. They don't enforce it equitably. How many different examples are we going to have to give you? They gaslit our vulnerable residents when asking for help when their landlord is being overly abusive. How many examples is it going to take? Also, for those who don't know about anti-terror research, the Swiss government, I believe, Switzerland, their government, had actually done a study of different approaches for how to handle folks who had returned from Syria that they could not prove were in ISIS at one point. I'm bringing this up because it is extreme, but I'm bringing it up because also the research is relevant and applies. So what they found was that the French model of reacting in an enforcement capacity was way less effective than the Denmark model. In Denmark, they actually paired people up with mentoring programs at scale. They helped people not be treated like criminals and terrorists. And it worked quite better. But they noted in their report that they didn't have the political will in their country, so they probably would like to do some mix of the two. So yeah, that's an interesting report. Now, the other thing that I want to note in the context of all of this is that you all have signed on to, in past capacities, a moratorium against utility shutoffs as the City Council of Urbana. That's because utility shutoffs dehoused people without an eviction, and it caused increases in caseloads. The IDPH reported that the Delta coronavirus strain was here in April, but it wasn't until 2 weeks after the utility disconnection avoidance program ended at the end of June that we started seeing our cases increase in July. Recognize the severity of the situation and follow on those calls to action. Good night.
Thank you, Alan. Next is Colin Wilson.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Colin, and I'm a member of the Civilian Police Review Board. Earlier today, you heard from Carla Boyd about an ordinance change. Now, we strongly believe that felons should be able to serve on the CPRB. Our mission is to improve community police interaction, and we believe that this is an important step. In that same section, Section D encourages board member diversity in income, age, gender, and key experience. Now, it goes without saying that someone with a felony probably has a unique viewpoint to bring to the discussion, and we feel we need that viewpoint. But it's complicated. Carol Mitten mentioned that we don't understand the totality of the circumstances, and she's right. I'm echoing Julie Watkins' comment from last meeting, but I'd like to get the police's feelings on this issue. Why do the police not want felons serving as a CPRB? My experience is that the police have good reasons for doing the things they do. And so I'd like to hear from UPD in this case. Relying on prior felonies to weed out bad actors on the CPRB probably isn't the best way to go forward. Instead, I believe we should trust the mayor and her choices, and to trust all the parties who give input along the way. Lastly, I want to say thanks to Grace Wilkin for attending one of our previous CPRB meetings and speaking out to us. For our part, we will also try to open more lines of communication. We'll need to continue working together to make even small changes. Anyway, thanks for your time. I know this has been a very long meeting. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you, Colin. Next is George.
Hi, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Great. So my name is George, and I'm a resident of Urbana. I am deeply concerned about the ongoing eviction crisis that has ensued following the Supreme Court's recent ruling to strike down the CDC moratorium on evictions and Governor Pritzker's failure to extend a statewide moratorium. As of yesterday, these decisions have put almost 5,000 families across the county at risk of being kicked out of their homes, many of whom do live in Urbana. I'm here today to urge all elected members of the Urbana City Council to take a stand and demonstrate leadership in this crisis by calling on the sheriff to pass a local moratorium on evictions. Our sheriff, Dustin Hewerman, has the unilateral power to refuse to prosecute evictions. With the stroke of a pen, he could prevent the worsening of the COVID-19 pandemic and protect families facing eviction, struggling businesses, and just all members of our community. This sort of action is not unprecedented either. The Cook County Sheriff did something similar at the start of the pandemic, and it worked great up there. The City Council may not have the authority to directly prohibit evictions, but you do have the authority and the imperative to pass a resolution urging the sheriff to act. Evictions will be disastrous for our community. They'll hurt folks from all walks of life. I know people in a range of different circumstances who are dealing with the threat of eviction, folks who can't sleep at night from the stress, folks who are working hard but can't make enough to pay rent or deal with the debt accrued during the pandemic. Evictions aren't good for tenants, they aren't good for landlords, they aren't good for public health, and they certainly aren't good for our community as a whole. We're going through another large spike in COVID cases right now, and evictions will make controlling the virus that much harder. It is possible to bounce back from the pandemic, but that's only going to be possible with decisive action. Please take a stand to protect your constituents from evictions, and publicly, both as individuals and as representatives on this council, call on the sheriff to refuse to prosecute evictions. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Next is Linda Turnbull.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, how are you guys doing tonight? First of all, I want to thank everybody that's sitting on that board that does the things they need to do to keep our community safe and make good decisions. And make the decisions because that's why we elected you, for you to make the decisions. But also I want to piggyback off of Minnie Pearson and whoever else spoke on in support of the cameras. Cameras are a good resource, I believe, because right now I live in a neighborhood where houses are being shot up. Husband has to lay on top of his wife to keep his wife from getting killed. A lady that I know for a long time went to her door, had nothing to do with it, got shot 5 times. Hallelujah. I cannot even sleep by my door without thinking about that. I mean, I would put a camera in my yard if I could, hallelujah, because it is so, the gun violence is so serious now. I mean, it's been serious, but it's really gotten out of hand. Not only that, we don't have time to wait. Just like Centennial installed the metal detectors, they didn't wait for no public hearing. They didn't wait for nothing. They just did it because it's time for that. Because right now it's a security issue. It's a safety issue. Hallelujah. Once you have experienced gun violence and it's been around you and it's been in your family, you would have a totally different outlook of this. And you would think differently. You would get whatever it needs to get and you'll get it right away. You wouldn't be doing a lot of talking, the waiting this and that, more lives are being taken. You need to do to keep the people safe. Hallelujah. And the people that we put in office, they will make decisions to keep the people safe because this is serious. We cannot keep waiting. As we wait, more lives are taken. Hallelujah. Right now is the time that we have to step forward and do something. Just not talk, just not wait, but do something. Yeah, like I said, the cameras are only like a 1-year contract. Let's see what it does. We can't say what those cameras want to do. Ran 2 helped catch a guy that was shooting up there and came down here and the whole mother was murdered. A girlfriend was shot and paralyzed. Hallelujah. You can't say them cameras is not doing anything. Every time something happens in our city, the first thing they say on TV, anybody have camera? They got footage because people are not talking and they won't talk. They are afraid. We can't keep waiting. We have to do something, just like Minnie said. Hallelujah. Please look into it and make a good decision on this. Some of the stuff that some people are saying, hallelujah, weigh it out. Keep us safe. I have been dramatized. I'm just going to say it right here. I've been dramatized. Hallelujah. I live in a neighborhood. Somebody got shot down the street. 2 or 3 people killed. Around the corner, houses got shot up. Husband has to lay on top of his wife to keep her from getting killed. Hallelujah. Please do something. We cannot wait. You guys have a nice evening.
Thank you, Linda. Next is Harat Kambatsi. Sorry if I mispronounced your name.
That's all right. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. My name is Haran Kevansi. I live in Urbana. I'm also an organizer with the Party for Socialism and Liberation. And I want to talk today about evictions. It's a thing that's already been talked about, but it is an imminent crisis facing our community. Right now, at least 4,600 households across Champaign County could be at risk of eviction any day now. The eviction moratorium expired yesterday, which means that this threat is upon us at this moment. And the Party for Socialism and Liberation here has been carrying out a campaign over the past month to gather support for an extended eviction moratorium, been calling on the sheriff of Champaign County, Dustin Huerman, to refuse to carry out evictions, and also seeing if people in the community need help filling out rental assistance. And in this process, we've gotten support from hundreds of people across Champaign-Urbana. We've also spoke to a lot of people in the community who are deeply in fear of being evicted. We've heard a lot of painful stories of people who have been unfairly treated by landlords, people who are down on their luck, and people who have been going through the established support systems. Just yesterday, I talked to someone in Urbana who expressed that they were deeply afraid of being evicted because they had filled out their ERA application months ago and they hadn't heard a thing. So there is the established structures to help people who are behind on rents and mortgages clearly aren't doing what they need to do. And the immediate action that needs to be taken is to say no more evictions will be carried out in Champaign County. That is a thing that Dustin Huerman, the sheriff of Champaign County, can do unilaterally. We are part of a national campaign called Cancel the Rents, calling for the cancellation of rent and mortgage debt nationwide, which is the only thing that will get us out of this long-term eviction crisis. But that is something that the federal government needs to act on. The federal government has dropped the ball. The state government has dropped the ball. The onus is now on us at the local level to act, specifically on Dustin Huerman. He can decide any day now unilaterally that there will be no evictions. As has been mentioned, there is precedent for this. It's been done in other places. And I understand that local officials like yourselves don't have the same amount of power to act on these things, which is why it's so important that we put pressure on the sheriff to act. I would urge all of you to reach out in your capacities as public officials, as elected officials, to call on the sheriff to not carry out evictions. This will be a crisis of human rights, a public health crisis, a public safety crisis. We have seen in other places the exploration of eviction moratoriums has led to spikes in COVID cases, spikes in gun violence. Thousands and thousands of people in our community could be thrown onto the streets. We have to act on this. We have to put people before property. And I would urge all of you to consider what can be done at this level to protect our residents against evictions, and to call upon the sheriff to use his unilateral power to protect our community against mass evictions, against mass homelessness, against these things that will put not only those being evicted at risk, but put everyone at risk through these effects that will reverberate across our community. Thank you for your time. I urge all of you to act, continue talking about this, keep fighting against evictions in our community until we know that everyone is safe and in their homes. Thank you.
Thank you, Haran. Next is Sarah Nixon.
Hello, City Council. This is Sarah Nixon. I join those Urbana voices who are calling upon you to soundly and firmly reject the proposal to turn Urbana into a Big Brotherhood dystopia. I'm calling upon you to enact ordinances instead that will both prohibit the use of ALPR surveillance and promote community engagement, oversight, and extensive transparency for the implementation of any future law enforcement surveillance technology. People are traumatized, terrorized, and panicking right now, and that is never a sound place from which to make big decisions. The fear is huge, but it clouds judgment. The refrain from a vocal handful is do something. We cannot wait. We cannot wait. So then don't wait. Vote instead to empower the people. Focus the funds, for example, on equipping willing and participating neighborhood watch households in targeted or in and near targeted communities with their own surveillance cameras. Mass state surveillance via ALPR disempowers the people. Hand that power back to the community where it belongs. As well, clearly Minnie Pearson does not speak for all members of the African American community. Over the past week, I spoke with members of Rantoul's African American community. What they shared with me exposes that the presentation you were given left out some vital facts. The plan to install Flock ALPRs in Rantoul was covert. It was carried out entirely behind the scenes with no public notice nor input. It was never even put before the village board and put to a vote. In fact, the Rantoul residents I spoke with were envious of Urbana because our city council is actually being consulted. My friends in Rantoul stated that when the village administration was confronted about their deception, their response was, yes, we know that we should have put this before the board, but we decided it would be easier to do a mea culpa later than ask for permission first. And Flock stood by while they did this. Next, Mr. Murdoch from Flock stated to the council last week that Flock is, quote, working with ACLU, but in fact, the ACLU is raising loud alarms about ALPRs and specifically about Flock's ALPRs. Just last month, the ALCU of Rhode Island called on the city councils of Cranston, Pawtucket, and Woonsocket to direct their respective police departments to halt the use of automated license plate readers, a reader technology leased from the company Flock Safety. In a letter sent to the city council and mayor of each municipality, the ALCU expressed concerns about the serious privacy issues such technologies can pose to all residents and noted that these systems were inappropriately installed on a trial basis in the absence of any public notice, input, or statutory guidance. The ALCU's detailed letter points out that when police surveillance techniques like these ALPRs are promoted, they often imply a false choice between public safety and privacy. But public safety is the result of community-based tools and systems that directly and tangibly support residents. It is not and has never been a consequence of indiscriminate 24/7 surveillance. To suggest that such surveillance technology is only a threat to those committing crimes is dismissive of the legitimate privacy and safety concerns that all residents have, and particularly ignores how police surveillance over the decades has often targeted communities in a discriminatory manner. I don't know how much time I am at. 8 seconds. So I'll have to leave it there.
Thank you, Sarah. Next, or was she the last? Alexander Rogers.
Hello, my name is Alexander Rogers. I'm a resident of Urbana, and just apologies in advance. I just got off an 11-hour shift, so if my thoughts are a little bit convoluted, I apologize. I'll try to make myself as cogent as possible. Today, I'd like to talk about the imminent health and safety crisis that is the ending of the Illinois state moratorium. It is apparent to me that thousands of Urbana and Champaign residents will lose their homes and or be evicted as a result of this moratorium. This is going to lead to a crisis on multiple levels. As we know, the people without homes and people that are, materially destitute and or unable to provide for themselves are more likely to engage in crime. This is going to ultimately be a butterfly effect that will start from the smallest portion of affected members and resonate out to all swaths of the community. As people have said before, this is something that can be done or can be levied for at this level. Obviously not at the same power that the Sheriff Dustin can ultimately levy for, but I urge you all to demand that he stop processing evictions during this time. Someone else was speaking about cameras and about public health and safety, and I suppose I'll throw in my 2 cents to that as well. I would broadly agree that increasing the extent to which the Champaign-Urbana community is a surveillance state ultimately increases the paranoia, decreases the well-being and sense of well-being that people have in their homes and in their neighborhoods, and is ultimately not a complete solution to any sort of public health or safety problem. This is something that we should be addressing systemically at the root, and merely putting up cameras does not stop the gun violence, does not stop the crime. Just in the same way that merely persecuting or prosecuting the people that are committing crime does not actually get at the root of the problem. One of these roots is going to be the end of the moratorium and the eventual and continued eviction of people from their homes. As long as this is going to continue, I see the Champaign-Urbana community as in a state of crisis, and I call on all of you to do your part and to be responsible civil servants and advocate for the right thing, basically. Because if not, I can't see how we can go on saying that we're serving our community and that we're doing our due diligence. I think that's all I had to say tonight. Thank you all for your time. Like I said, I've been Alexander Rogers, Urbana resident. Have a nice night, y'all.
Thank you, Alexander. Arthur Paganini.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll wait for my time to start. Hey, so yeah, I also just got off a really long day, so I'll do my best here. I hear a lot of talk about like what we want to put money into in this community. And yesterday I went to Southeast Urbana because the eviction moratorium is coming up, and so I was trying to reach people about to see like who's getting evicted, who needs rental assistance. And out of the 50 people I spoke to that answered the door, there were about 10 people who were getting rent assistance. 7 of them directly asked me and the people that I was with for help. These are like people, man. Like they just need help with rent. They don't they're just having a rough time, especially with this pandemic. Like people have lost their jobs. I don't want to say any names to say who anyone is, but one of the people said they lost their jobs and they don't want to tell their landlord because they're afraid they might get evicted like right away. There's this homeless person that hangs around the co-op. I don't know if you've seen him a lot down in downtown Urbana, but he came up to me the other day and he said that he got beat up by a bunch of teenagers, that they kicked him and they kicked him around. It makes me sad. Like homelessness is not like, it's just not like, it's not just like a lack of a home, it's like you don't have anything. You don't have access to drinking water. You don't have a place to sleep at night. You don't have like a family that can stay with you. If you don't have family, like where do you go? And this whole like talk of cameras, honestly, it just makes me really mad because like what we're saying is we don't have money to put people in homes. We can't put people in homes. We can't feed these people, but we have enough money to pay Amazon millions of dollars for their Ring doorbells to put in these communities where these people already don't have infrastructure. These people already do not have a lot of these are like essential services, but we have the money to buy like Ring doorbells. I don't, it doesn't make sense to me. I understand, look, I'm not saying that I have all the answers to like solve crime. I'm not saying that, I value everyone's opinion who's coming in to speak today, but I just feel like there has to be a better way of addressing these issues than just buying cameras. I know someone earlier said putting up streetlights. I think just even things like that, things that like improve like the community itself, like improve the places that these people live and not just like more surveillance. But that's just my opinion. I cede my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Arthur. Okay, Drake Mateer.
Hello, can you all hear me?
Yes, we can, Drake.
All right, my name is Drake Mateer, resident of Champaign, first year grad student at the U of I in the Masters of Public Health. Someone said earlier today, people over property. And I will always say people over property, especially in this instance when we're talking about security cameras, which I believe the city is in the process of trying to privatize surveillance. First of all, surveillance in the sense of stopping crime has been proven to not work. Maybe property crime, again, people over property, but not violent crime. I know that there are cameras also on campus, but yet sexual assault is so rampant. I'm from Chicago, where 32,000 security cameras implemented in 2018 has shown to be not the best idea in deterring violence, as we have seen violent crime rates increase across not just here in Champaign, this state, or this country, but the world. People are dealing with heightened levels of stress, anxiety, depression because of the political instability and because of the unforeseen future that will be detrimental if we do not act now. That future is actually now, the one that we've all feared, the one that we've all said, what will happen? Is climate change real? What's going to happen when this happens? Evictions are going on now. Are we going to put cameras on evicted households? What about the connection between gun violence and homelessness, where families who, let's say, have been visited by gun violence at their doorstep, at their housing, they end up losing their housing and having to remain homeless until a landlord approves or deems them viable for housing? And what about those children that are homeless, let homeless, that are neglected not only by the powers that be, but also by the community that should be fighting for them? Not saying increasing more cameras, as if everybody Black here is falling for the Black on Black crime trope, so we must increase surveillance of our people. I say no to that. I'm against any further criminalization of these young Black boys. Yes, boys. They are human. Black people have been fighting not for identity, but being. And there's something profound even in comedy, adult cartoons. There was an episode in South Park where Stan, the white boy, kept trying to tell Token, the token Black guy, that he wanted to understand, that he couldn't understand, that he just wanted to understand. He doesn't understand. But it wasn't until that he finally understood that he will never understand did he understand how he can be a true advocate for the people. I'm a Black man. I do not know what it means to be a Black woman. I don't know the experience. I also don't know the experience of being a domestic violence survivor or victim. But I know one of the first things that I was taught, even through advocacy through the university, but also through the home, but also through friends and comrades, when I'm standing there with somebody who is a survivor and they are coming to me about their story, the first thing I always say is that I would never understand. But because I don't understand and I see that you are in pain, I will work with you, not act in the form of reactionary order. We must act to stop violence, and cameras do not do that, and evictions sure do not do that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Drake. And Serena Dodge will be our last person because we have to move on with the business of the city.
I'm
You're, sweetie, we can't hear you. Where did she go?
and stuff. We just need cameras. It's the best thing. And that's all I would like to say.
Serena, we didn't hear you earlier.
Oh, sorry. Okay. I don't care what nobody says. We need cameras. People are getting shot without with.
Okay, you're breaking up. We can't hear you, sweetie.
And nobody knows where the killer is. Nobody knows because there's no surveillance. Nobody can know. You just have to look through clues. That's not going to work. You need to get these cameras so we can see who's doing all this because that isn't going to stop anything. You just need to get them cameras. Please. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Serena. Okay.
And we did have another hand up still from a phone number.
And when do we start public input?
8:56. So you'll need a vote to extend.
I would motion to extend public comment 10 minutes.
Second.
Okay. Clerk, please call the roll.
Okay. Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Colasetti,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes.
Okay, this is the last person. With the number ending 435. Hello? You need to unmute. Thank you.
Hello, this is Eldris Mundakar. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor Marlin and the council members. I just wanted to, I did bring this information to the Minister Alliance of Champaign-Urbana vicinity, which I am president. And tonight I'm coming as a personal resident of Urbana, and due to the security cameras and the license plate recognition system that is being discussed. And I just wanted to say, of course, weep with those who have been impacted by crime and had loved ones killed and things that have just happened recently. And so we pray for the families. I wanted to say that I know in Decatur they just implemented that, but it was in high crime areas. So if that's going to be done and if that's implemented, it must be evenly distributed. I think I heard that maybe last week, not just in high crime areas, all over the city, for it to be fairly done and to avoid racial profiling and disparities, which we know Urbana has just gone through. And the chief presented a report. And we've been going through this for several years with the disparities. So it cannot just be done in certain areas. It's got to be done fairly distributed across the area, Urbana neighborhoods. And I was doing just a little research, California Auditor's Report 2020 on for this jurisdictions use of this technology. That's the license plate technology. The data collected is primarily not related to individuals suspected of crimes. Many agencies did not implement privacy protective oversight measures despite laws requiring it. Several agencies did not have documented usage or retention policies. It goes on. There's some things in Vermont related to audits at the state level. So I am looking at it from the wider scope of abuse. And for example, we sent in a letter related to what happened on campus, because the misuse of the the database on campus and the security cameras by law enforcement official. And so we have to make sure that if this is done, it has to be evenly distributed across the neighborhoods, and there must be absolute oversight over this. And I think someone said logs, and it has to be done based on criminal acts that have been discovered, and such as what is done at banks, that is posted publicly, and people can see that, okay, that someone has been, robbed us, done something, and the community sees it. It cannot be just within the police area. It has to be a publicly done, process. So for it to be a viable process to be changed, it has to be done. There's too much mistrust, and we're not saying all police are doing that. We're saying we need the police. We're saying that there's still some things that are going on, and we must do it in a way that is fairly done, not that continued, profiling may happen in the future. So we have to do this fairly if we're going to do something like this, and it has to be done so the community is able to see. So down the line, we're not back where we were, 5 or 10 years ago. I think.
Thank you, Melinda.
Is my time up?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just hearing beeps. I didn't hear anything else.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Wayne Williams. Okay, you're the last one, Wayne, because we do have to move on. Wayne?
Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Hi, my name is Wayne Williams. I'm a resident of Ward 5. I don't support surveillance cameras in my neighborhood or any other neighborhood. However, I am very troubled by the most recent violence in our shared community. And after thinking about it for a very long time, I do support the automatic license plate readers. I think that, we're at the point where we need to try something. It's the automatic license plate readers are not as intrusive as cameras, which I don't support. I would also like in implementing the automatic license plate readers that you really, when you look at your funding sources, I would really like you to look deep, and instead of taking money from just one part of the budget, really look at taking from, if there's any money left over in the police budget. Because if you're gonna do this, I think that's the appropriate place in the budget for the funds to come. So I do support the license plate readers. I do not support surveillance cameras. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. And that is the end of our public input. Next on the agenda, staff reports. Do we have any staff reports tonight?
I'm going to save my staff report for next week. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Carol. Next, we have resolution number 21201-09-043R, resolution approving the Urbana Home Consortium Community Housing Development Organization Agreement, Habitat Choto, developer, FY 2020. And Braden is here. Hello.
Yes, good evening. Can everyone hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
So as the lead entity of the Urbana Home Consortium, the City of Urbana is responsible for executing agreements with community housing development organizations, which are also known as CHODOs. The CHODO agreement that's before you tonight is between the City of Urbana and Habitat for Humanity of Champaign County, which is certified as a CHODO. Under the terms of this agreement, which is attached in your packet, the consortium will grant $24,802 in CHODO project funds to Habitat for Humanity for the construction of one affordable housing unit located at 1112 North Champaign Street in Champaign. These funds were originally part of a larger allocation to first followers for the creation of affordable rental units for low-income individuals. However, first followers had a change in the scope of their project, and they ended up not needing the entire grant amount. They determined that they only required $29,998 to successfully complete their program. So the balance of that grant that was originally given to first followers, the $24,802, needs to be reallocated to another project to ensure that the funds are not deobligated by HUD. As a result, city staff reached out to Habitat and requested that they submit an application for an eligible project so as to ensure that these funds can remain local and continue to further affordable housing in the community. So home funds come from HUD, and the City of Urbana manages the home funds as a pass-through agency. What that means is that there will be no change to the city general fund as a direct result of executing the proposed agreement. All requests for grant funding are made on a reimbursement schedule as well. So the options before you tonight are to approve the resolution authorizing an agreement with Habitat for Humanity of Champaign County to reallocate these CHODO funds and place this item on the consent agenda, to approve the resolution authorizing an agreement with Habitat for Humanity of Champaign County to reallocate the CHODO funds with suggested changes, or to not approve the resolution and to return the funds to HUD. It is the recommendation of staff as well as the Community Development Commission that City Council approve the resolution that is approving a developer agreement with Habitat. So that is my presentation. Thank you. Are there any questions? Yes.
Mary Alice?
Yeah, thank you. Real quickly, Brendan. So the first followers money was supposed to be used for affordable rental units. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And do you know how many affordable rental units they were able to create based on the funds that they did spend?
Yeah, the project was for 2 affordable rental units.
And so did they not do any affordable rental units?
No, they did. They were able to complete their project, and because that scope changed, they didn't need the entire grant amount.
Okay. All right. And then this would go to Habitat, which is also kind of under the umbrella of affordable housing.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
Grace?
Thank you. Thanks for the update. And I'm still not really clear what the situation was here. So my question was if you could just give us a little more information when you said that they completed the project and then the scope changed. Because when I contacted leadership at First Followers, they were really confused about this ordinance, wanted to make it clear that they were not, returning or turning down money. So if you could kind of clarify a little bit about this, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, they're not turning down or returning any money. The original grant amount for the project, just the scope of it was not, they didn't end up needing that entire amount. So that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that any funding that's not committed to a project, HUD will take back at the end of the project period. So in order to prevent that from happening, and so we can keep any money local, we reached out to Habitat to see if they had any projects so that we could, again, keep that money here in the community.
Okay, any more questions? Motion?
I'll make a motion. And I'm not going to make a motion for the consent agenda because we only have 2 things on this agenda. So I'll move that we send this to City Council with the recommendation for approval, resolution number 2021-09043R, resolution approving the Urbana Home Consortium Community Housing Development Organizational Agreement for Habitat Chodo Developer for, I don't know what P stands for, but PY 2020.
Project year.
Project year, thank you.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what that was either. I thought FA. Second, James.
I'll second.
Okay. Discussion? Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes.
Okay, next is an ordinance number 2021-09-044, an ordinance revising the FY 2022 annual budget amendment number 3. This is from HR and Finance.
Yeah,
Hello,
I think the mayor wanted to say a few words before I explain this.
Okay, Mayor Marlin.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Yes, I wanted to, since this ordinance is related to the proposed purchase of the license plate readers, I think it's important to summarize what we're talking about, what we think they will do, what we know they will not do before we start this discussion. So I appreciate Wayne Williams distinguishing between a surveillance camera and license plate readers. We are not proposing to purchase surveillance cameras. They will not record audio or video. These are not Ring doorbells, nor do we claim that it will stop gun violence. What we're proposing is a purchase of license plate readers that takes a real-time snapshot of the rear of vehicles and the license plate as they're passing by. These are simply an investigative tool, one investigative tool that we can add to our toolbox that can help identify vehicles that may be involved in shootings and other crimes. These license plate readers can help provide information that witnesses and victims are either unable to provide, unwilling, or afraid to provide. That's what we're running into in this community for good reason. The ALPRs provide an opportunity to improve our countywide collaboration across jurisdictions to solve shootings and other crimes. They help remove human error and bias from vehicle identification. They're cost effective compared to a lot of other tools out there, and they can be strategically deployed. The APLR data is owned and protected by the city, and I believe that they can help disrupt the pattern of retaliatory shootings that is, as we've heard over and over again, traumatizing families and neighborhoods in recent years. An important component of this whole program is the policy governing their use. I fully understand the importance of protecting people's civil rights and safeguarding against abuse of the system. And every tool, or many tools that we have in the city, have use policies associated with them, and this is no different. Typically, when we're implementing a new tool, and I think back to the body cameras, further back to tasers, you can move ahead with purchase and planning for implementation, and development and getting the details of the policy finalized takes place in a parallel track, so that you can end up, when you're ready for implementation, you have a finalized policy in place that governs their use, but in no cases were we ever proposing to implement this program without the policy in place. We just believe it's important to move in a parallel track. And that's basically where we are at this point. So this ordinance is related to obtaining funds to purchase these license plate readers. Thanks.
Okay, before we continue, I'd like to make a motion, or I don't know if I can make a motion. Would someone entertain making a motion to extend the meeting?
I'll make a motion that we extend the meeting until 10:45.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, James. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Quisenberry,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti, yes, Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey.
Yes. Okay, moving on. Elizabeth?
Sure. I'll just hit a few key points related to the budget amendment for this item. So first of all, because this is a budget amendment, it does require 6 of 8 affirmative votes. So the mayor votes on this as well. So this budget amendment would basically reallocate unspent funds in the police department uniform line item from last year into this year's budget so that those funds are available for the automatic LPR system. I do want to mention that even if not for this specific request, we would have been asking you to roll those funds forward at some point in any case. And I'll give you some very quick background. Some years ago, we cleaned up the vehicle and equipment replacement fund, and there were a number of very small expenditure items included there. Some of them were a few $100s. And so in the process of determining what should remain in the VERF, which we ultimately decided was capital expenditures that are 5,000 and over, those smaller items were moved into operating budgets with the understanding that we would essentially create a revolving fund. So after the end of the fiscal year, we would rebudget that money into the following year. And the reason for that is that those expenditures don't occur on necessarily a regular schedule. We budgeted a level amount, but we know that they don't happen in even amounts each fiscal year. So I just want to point out that's kind of a unique thing about the particular line item that we're asking to rebudget here. But I think that's all I need to say about the budget amendment.
Okie dokie. Chief Seraphin, did you want to say something?
Thank you, Sharice. I do have a couple of points. We brought this up a couple of weeks ago, and I wanted to refine some of the understanding because I've done it myself. And I had there was some discussion about where's the information and how is it all stored and what exactly is it. And someone had told the story. I think this is interesting to help. As if someone was sitting alongside the road in a lawn chair with a notebook and just simply wrote date, time, and this plate went by. Date, time, and this plate, the next plate went by. And that person would call and make sure that wasn't flagged in Leeds as stolen or NCIC or Amber Alert or Silver Alert or not on the local hot list. And if it wasn't, that notebook would just sit there. And then we have ultimately, if we had a shooting, we'd go back and we'd find the person with the notebook and say, hey, we're looking for something within, an hour last night at between 1 and 2 a.m. And I just say that because I think there was some confusion, and I don't know that I was 100% clear that the system does not check for Secretary of State records. So there's not names, driver's license information, registration information, those kinds of things. And again, the proposed right now retention is 30 days for this particular system. So I just kind of wanted to clarify that a little bit. I know there's some other questions that come in with regards to FOIA. I will just say that this is a new area for FOIA law and for other legal experts. Matter of fact, Flock had 2 systems in 2019 in Illinois, and they're over 40 now. And so as this area evolves, one of the things that so will some of these other issues. As of right now, it is staff's assessment that these items, the reports that we would get would not be subject to FOIA, that there are certain exemptions that would apply. I will also state that we have even had some preliminary conversations trying to sort this out with the public access counselor and the Attorney General's office. In addition, it's my understanding that there is some pending legislation now that's moving through with regards to license plate readers generally, and within the state legislation on this topic is also some guidance with regards to the FOIA statute and not having that material be disclosed. And again, I'm checking a couple of quick notes because, like I said, I know I had gotten some questions. There was a question regarding other municipalities and access to those, if you will, the notebooks, the information that exists. And we can accept or deny other municipalities access to our system. There is an audit trail. And so I'll jump forward with regards now to just some basic policy points. Absolutely, the council can provide input, make sure that we understand what everybody's concerns are, and make sure that we build a policy that satisfies those things. Clearly, number one, first and foremost, this information in the LPR system would be for law enforcement use only. Any misuse would be subject to discipline. There's certain training for this specific system, as well as to make sure that there's LEEDS certifications for those who would have access to this. The other thing that I don't want to get lost in this, is that any information that would come in, if there was a hit, hey, there's a stolen car that just drove by camera X, the officers must verify that it's the correct information. Is this plate trying to correct for any maybe errors that would occur? They must verify before they take action. Another component of the policy would be documenting any action that they do take. So whether that's with a police report or perhaps a traffic citation or whatnot, those actions would be documented. And again, we would have an audit process. We're reviewing a couple of other different policies that we've gotten a hold of, and some do annual, some do quarterlies. And so we're trying to decipher the best way exactly to do that. We could look at things like frequencies of plates. I know there was some concern, and the Flock system has fields that can be sorted. So we could look and say, okay, well, what plate is being run, or is there an officer that's doing something that whose name shows up more? The other thing I wanted to also note is that, again, there could be a difference between who just gets the notices in that, hey, a car drove by camera X, as opposed to those who can enter or those who can search, and whether we refine those and scope it down to, okay, if you want to enter and search, it's just for supervisors or detectives, but we're not allowing the entire department to be able to enter and search things. And so those are the kinds of things that we're looking at. I know that I think Mr. Evans even brought up something like what would be in. We saw a policy where if they weren't going to do city ordinance violations or low level events, if you will, like no registration violations. So there's work in progress as we're working through this. Those areas, though, are clearly ones that we want to be aware of. So I guess I will let the conversation continue, but I know those are questions that we've gotten. Thank you, Sharice.
We entertain a motion of sorts to at least get the topic on for discussion on the table.
Teresa, I can make a motion.
Okay.
I'll move that ordinance number 2021-09044, an ordinance revising the fiscal year 2022 annual budget amendment number 3 is moved to City Council with no recommendation.
I'll second.
Okay, Mary Alice made the motion and James seconded it. Discussion. Mary Alice.
I want to thank the chief and the mayor for giving some more context and background. A lot of stuff that I've been thinking about in terms of these license plate readers, you covered. I do want to state that I spent quite a bit of time this weekend looking at various court cases in terms of these license plate readers, Maryland, Kansas, California, and so forth. Some of the things that came up in those court cases was the amount of license plate readers. So the totality of the entire communities being covered, I think that that was a concern in Maryland. And based on our conversation last week, I think that the estimate would be approximately 20 that would be in our community. Another thing that came up in Kansas was the automatic flagging of a car and not requiring the police officer to validate that the number that they said was there was the car that they stopped. So I would just kind of add that into a policy. And then the other thing that I wanted to bring up, because we've talked a little bit about the ACLU, and there's a big report. Jaya, thank you for sharing that with me. And the basic things that they talked about were the consistent monitoring, which we just talked about, I just talked about with Maryland in terms of the pervasiveness of the cameras, the amount of time that we are keeping the data. So there are apparently some communities that keep the data forever. ACLU has a problem with that. So I think the proposal is for 30 days. RAND also wrote a 160-page report that I read this weekend. And the two things that they talked about, again, were the two uses for these cases. So there is reactive, right? And then there is analytic, like trying to stop crime. And I think that somebody in the public actually talked about that today. My understanding is this is more of a reactive state. So if some crime happens, then that gets put into the system as a hot list. And correct me if I'm wrong, Bryant, but I didn't think that we were using it for analytic purposes, trying to predict crime in different areas. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And so with that, I think we minimize the number of cars that we're kind of tracking, so to speak, because those cars have already been identified as potentially part of a crime that just existed. And then, the second thing that the RAND talks about is basically a requirement to need to know. So the people who have access, which you talked about, are only the people in the department who need to know the information would have access to the system. So I just wanted to share those thoughts.
Okay, James?
Yeah, I think while I'm supportive of us moving forward with this, I think the important thing is that the policy get developed and shared. I appreciate asking for our input in that so that we can be comfortable that there's enough checks and balances to address any potential abuses. Of course, limiting the scope of who can access the information is one major step towards preventing abuse, but the review of who's using it and how often and understanding the justification for that is another really straightforward model that we can implement to make sure it's not abused. I think the disconnect between the information that this system is going to be gathering and the Secretary of State traffic information is an important circuit breaker here, so that don't get mixed and that we're not saving names and other information associated with people who are just driving by. I think that's an important thing to maintain and something that we have to insist doesn't become a part of the tool going forward. One of the values of doing this for a limited period of time is there's not a front end capital expense. So if after a year it's not working out, it's not helping us in the way we thought it was, we can walk away and we're not leaving equipment or other things on the table. They have to come and take it, is what I understand. They would have to come and deinstall it if we didn't renew the contract for future years. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Thank you. So I'm supportive, but I do think we have to have an active conversation going forward about these tools to prevent abuse and to make sure definitely that we're seeing some kind of results out of this that justify the investment.
Okay, thank you, James. Jaya?
I want to note that I appreciate that we're thinking about how to do something quickly. I know we're all very concerned about the gun violence in our community, and I mentioned last week that I'd started kind of reviewing what literature was available, and I appreciate that some other council members asked to share those resources. And, you know, Mary Alice has already shared some of what I found. I will say that some of the biggest things that stood out to me were not only concerns about Fourth Amendment rights, which was a question that Chandra had asked when we had the presentation, but also questions about privacy and free speech, and the ACLU talking about actually a chilling effect on those other rights for people. And I want to make it clear that I did a pretty comprehensive review. I looked at reports that were very supportive of this technology, including from the International Association of Chiefs of Police. The RAND report, generally speaking, was very supportive. I read another research study that was on board as well, but they noted that there was no statistical significance in the difference in crime rates that they found after implementing this technology. But one of the biggest things that I saw, no matter what source I was looking at, was a clear need for policies to be in place before thinking about implementing something like this. So while I hear that, you know, often things are done in tandem, this is still an investment. This is an investment of resources that we know we want to do something, right, with these funds to address gun violence, but we don't yet know if this is the right way to do it because none of us have seen even a draft proposal or of a policy, right? Even in the conversation tonight is it could, right? It could say this. Could is not an answer. We need to know what is going to be in those policies before we can be asked to make a decision about this. So like I said, just clearly saw over and over again, the need for clear policies, the potential for abuse is something that was cited. I'd mentioned this when we were first discussing this as well as concerns about tracking former partners, tracking activists. There was a research study that looked at Muslim folks who were being tracked as they went to and from their mosques. So I'm not saying that these things are going to happen, but we need to know what policies are going to be in place to protect people before we can implement something like this, as much as we all want to move quickly to address the gun violence in our community.
Grace?
Thank you. Mine's along the same lines. I definitely agree with and understand the urgent need to address community violence. As you know, made very clear, these license plate readers will not prevent violent crimes. They will not prevent it. No one is saying that. So I understand that we need to address the issue. But I want to see policy and more information and research before approving. I think that I'm not necessarily against them. I think that they have a place and they could have some good advantages and some uses with the retaliatory stuff and solving some of the violent crimes. But I think that we need to know the policy, all the research, and the safeguards that are going to be in place to prevent abuse or misuse of the system. The way I see it, if we approve this now, there will be no more input from the council and the public. On its policy, the location, we don't even know where these are. There was a 4-page report that we're going to use to approve this, and that is just not enough information for me. We don't have information about how it will be reported, how we'll oversee that audited system. I think this is bare bones, too rushed, and we need more information. If we're working on this parallel track with purchasing and policy, why can't we put the policy first? Approval is pretty simple. It takes us one meeting, a cow and then a council meeting to approve it. The policy, I imagine, would take much longer. So if we're working in parallel, why don't we have some more work on the policy first and then we can consider approving it? Because I don't believe that we'll have any more input or transparency if we approve this now, and we won't have the chance to have input on things like what the policy and location will be, what kind of reports we'll have for the public and for council. And I think that we need a lot more things in place before we can address this important issue with this technology.
Okay, before I call on anyone else, I'd like to extend the meeting. Is anyone going to motion for that?
I'll move that we extend it to 11.
Second.
Okay. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Can you please tell me who seconded that?
It was Jaya.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin.
Yes.
Okay, Mayor, I think you wanted to interject something.
Yeah, just I wondered if the chief could clarify a timeline. You know, if this was approved next week for purchase, it's not like these readers would be installed within a couple of days. It's going to take weeks of planning for the implementation, which is why that will give us time to also develop the policy and to continue to get input from the community and from you. So this is not something that is going to happen overnight in terms of even implementing this. But maybe the chief has more information.
I don't know that I have a whole lot more, but yes, it would take weeks for us to actually get in the queue. And I understand the policy concerns. As a matter of fact, we have hammered out a very rough draft already, but I don't think we have gotten where we want to be yet with it. So, but I understand everyone's concerns. But yes, it would take weeks to try to even, once this gets moving, before they won't be here install on Thursday. No.
Okay, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief, for your comments tonight, because it follows along, and I really appreciate you being concerned about policy. You know, we have to understand that this technology will not just affect the shooters or the criminals. It affects potentially everybody. Everybody's going to get their car photographed. Everybody's going to get their license plate recorded. Everybody's car and plate will be stored. And, you know, Chief, I'm sorry, but you keep saying it's just, you know, yeah, Flock is not running it by the DMV, but your police department will. This license plates yield names and addresses. You can't deny that. I have, you know, done some research as well, and I have got 20 issues that I think need to be in a policy, in a written policy. And I think that before we can approve anything, the public needs to see what is our policy. So I'm not going to bore you with my list of 20 things that I think should be in the policy, but I will also go to the incredible meeting that we had September 20th, where, you know, a digital surveillance company provides zero statistics regarding the effectiveness of this tool. We have no statistics regarding how many arrests could be attributed to these cameras. We have no statistics regarding the number of shooters that have been arrested because of these cameras. We have no statistics as to the reduction of shots fired in other cities that are experiencing, have, because of these cameras. Have the shots fired gone down where cities have these cameras? We have nothing. We have 2 anecdotes, one in Rantoul, one in Decatur. You know, I found anecdotes in my research. In Colorado, women and children were handcuffed face down on the concrete because the license plate reader thought their SUV was a stolen motorcycle out of state. In Vallejo, California, 37% of their readings are misreads. So do I make a decision based on those anecdotes? We cannot do this on 2 anecdotes. So I'm asking, 1, that the city provide a written policy that the public can look over first, and 2, can Flock Safety provide some statistics. They've had 3 years in Illinois, 40 cities. It's a digital program. Can they provide the statistics? Because the public is counting on this to work. You heard the public comment tonight. They think we're going to catch shooters. They think it's going to reduce the shootings. I'd like to see that information. And because of that, I'm going to motion that we table this until that information is provided.
I'll second.
Second.
Actually, the correct motion would be to keep it in committee. Tabling it would kill it.
Okay, oh, I'm sorry. Didn't mean to do that. Did not mean to do that. I would motion to keep it in committee.
So I already have a motion on the floor, Chris, but I am happy to change it to keep it in the committee. And Phyllis, can you direct us on the proper procedure?
All you have to do is to rescind the motion that you put through to have it sent to council without recommendation, and then restate the motion to state that just to keep it in committee. That's all you have to do.
Do I need to have approval from the second?
Yes.
All right, so I will rescind my motion to send this on to city council with no recommendation, and change my motion to keep this in committee. So I guess, James, I don't know if you agree with that or not.
I will agree to that.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
No.
Ms. Colasetti,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin.
Yes.
And now we're back to discussion again. Mary Alice, could you take the chair for a minute?
Yeah, but discussion's over, Sharice, but I will take the chair if you want me to.
Okay.
The chair recognizes Sharice.
Well, because we've got a new motion, a different motion, don't we?
We just
So
voted on that one.
So my question is, isn't there a discussion then after that? After you move in second and take roll?
Phil, can you help us out?
Well, generally, you do your discussion before you take your final action. And when you voted on that to move it back into committee, you took your final action.
Okay, then that's okay. I can wait.
Can I make a suggestion as current chair?
Go
That
ahead.
your comments could be during council input.
No, because I get way too much to say, and I'm not going to be held to 3 minutes.
Okay. All right. Well, I relinquish the chair to Ms. Hersey.
Okay, so anyway, so we're done with that. Council input and communication. None?
I'm going to say something real quickly.
Wait, Jaya, she had her hand up first.
So I have a few things I wanted to share. One is I would say that this process earlier today with the co-responder model was not only frustrating, but I felt like was very inauthentic to what we had agreed on. I think that there was I feel at least that council members may were taken advantage of maybe not understanding the true impact of the way that ordinance was written. Was very disappointed to see that process move forward the way it did. On a different note, I'm excited that on Wednesday we have the walk and roll to work activities. I'm looking forward to participating in that and being involved in our community. I also want to highlight that as we're having these conversations about public safety, there was a really meaningful summit about domestic violence and the increase of gun violence last week, where we heard some really, really meaningful speakers, and many community members were involved in that conversation. And it's particularly timely because October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So I want to make note of the fact that this is a time for us to realize just how many people in our communities are impacted by domestic violence. And those rates have increased during the pandemic. And there is reason to believe that there's a connection between that fact and the gun violence in our community as well. So I appreciate the speakers who spoke to that. Related to that, just for folks who might need it, our local domestic violence shelters hotline number, which is available 24 hours a day, is 217-384-4390. And that's for Courage Connection, which provides support services for survivors of all genders who've experienced intimate partner violence, domestic violence, dating violence. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, Mary Alice.
All right, I'll make mine very quickly. I wanted to let Eddie Pratt Jr. know when he was talking about improvement of lighting that I believe we have $1 million set aside, and that is definitely something that is top of mind for people, is to ensure sidewalks and lighting in areas that don't have that infrastructure. We're able to invest in those things. And then I also wanted to thank Colin for providing input in terms of how we can make rental assistance better by having a person who's available to answer questions and to create an FAQ. So I will be making a phone call to make those suggestions to RPC. That's it.
Okay, Grace.
Thank you. I want to touch base on the comments about the eviction non-enforcement and would like some input maybe in the next meeting about what we can do with that individually and even more so collectively about preventing some eviction enforcement, if that's something that the rest of the council would like to do collectively and otherwise individually in the meantime. I agree with how the follow-up corresponder model was handled. I think it needs approval on a public vote. It does feel a lot like breaking trust when someone tells you that you approve something when you're saying, you know, I thought, no, I didn't. I would be willing to, but, you know, under a structured way that was already agreed upon. Also, last point was wondering when we're going to have the meeting about council priorities. We've talked about this weeks ago, months ago. There's been no movement on it. I was just wondering when or how we're supposed to schedule this. I would be willing to take initiative, but my understanding was that that was not necessary. So I'd like some information about that too sometime. Thanks.
Okay. Is there anyone else? Mayor Marlin?
Just a correction, it's actually $2 million is set aside in this year's budget for neighborhood infrastructure improvements, including streetlights. And to the council priority setting session, we've been reaching out to potential facilitators, have not yet located a person who would be available to facilitate these sessions, but we are looking for the facilitator for the council priority setting sessions.
Okay.
And I would say if you have worked with people or have suggestions or experience with folks who have done this, please let me know and we'll reach out.
Chandra?
I just wanted to say to Grace that I would be willing to, you know, collaborate, I guess, on this evictions thing or letter to the sheriff or whatever it needs to be. I think a letter signed by the entire council would be good. That's all.
So if that's the end of council input and comment, with no other business before city council, then we are adjourned.